Today marks 40 years since the death of John Lennon.
An unspeakable tragedy. John Lennon, outside of his apartment building on the west side of New York City, shot twice in the back, rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, dead on arrival.
Yeah, you know what? I was sitting with my dad when that happened, and I couldn't believe it. Much of the world found out that Lennon was killed. As you heard, Howard Cosell announced it during Monday Night Football, December 8th, 1980. The Beatles icon was only 40 years old when he was killed. Now, fans typically gather every year on the anniversary of his death in a place called Strawberry Fields there in Central Park. Let's bring in Bay Area music native and basically a classic DJ from growing up with him, Dave, your Duke Sholin. And Dave, this would be a happy occasion for me to talk to you, but we were talking about John Lennon, and you interviewed him just moments, I guess not moments, but shortly before he died.
Yes, Al. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks for being on with us.
Absolutely. Good to be with you, and hello to all my pals out in the Bay Area. Yeah, my crew here, we had my longtime producer, Ron Hummel, Lori Kay, my script writer, and Bert Keane, my longtime pal who was at Warner Brothers Records at the time. We spent the afternoon with John from about 12:30 or so till good at 4:30 in the afternoon. And it was an amazing interview. And the day was such an upper, and it ended on such a down note. But luckily, we were able to share John's thoughts with everyone all over the world on that last day.
Dave, do you ever wonder what would have happened if John hadn't been taken from us? Because whenever I think of John Lennon, I think of what would have happened had he been allowed to go on. We see Paul McCartney as the one, and Ringo Starr is still around. Those two are the only ones left. But what do you think would have happened? He had just released Double Fantasy. I always wonder where he would have gone musically.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that he would have continued. That was, probably, I don't know, the whole story that ended was so tragic, but the real tragedy is the fact that John was not able to spend all the years. He'd be 80 now. His birthday was October the 9th, same day as Sean. And he'd be able to spend all those years with Yoko, Sean, and he would be as engaged as anyone, especially with social and everything else going on right now. He'd be right there on top of it. Paul McCartney has a new album coming out next Friday. And I think John would be just as active as ever if he was with us today. And I think about it often. I do think about that. And it is hard to believe that all those years have gone by. And he was robbed of all that, and so were we.
So, Dave, what did you talk to him about on that last interview? Did you talk about his upcoming album, Double Fantasy, or what else did you talk about?
We covered a lot. I mean, the interview was set up really to talk about that album. It had just come out. Starting Over was already, a #1 song. And the album was really a love letter between John and Yoko. And Starting Over really was the theme, because that's the way he felt after being out of the music business for 5 years. This was his relaunch into everything, and he had a lot of plans, a lot of things to do. I think he actually would have gone out on the road, gone to tour, and do so much more. And that never happened. But we covered all kinds of different subjects, Sal. We went everything from politics to music, and of course the Beatles did come up in the conversation. It wasn't the focus, but certainly it's part of it. And as he said in the interview, he was speaking to his generation, people that grew up with the Beatles.
How do you think John Lennon's legacy is with people who, maybe were born after he was killed? Do you still think that he carries the weight that he did, that he did when he was with the Beatles?
That's a great question, and I believe from at least do I actually, just from people that I've talked to, just from people in that that are the 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, they have that same reverence, and they love the Beatles. The Beatles music spans generations, and the more the real music fans have studied John Lennon, have known, have gone back, checked his background, listened to his music, and yes, that that continues on, and certainly it's our generation passes along to our kids, and they'll do the same thing. So,
well, Dave, thank you so much for.
No, I was just going to say something.
I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
We had a great ride in the car because his car hadn't shown up, but we had a great ride over to the studio, and we really bonded after that day. He gave me a big hug, said, "I'll see you in San Francisco." It was really special, and part of that ride over, for readers who want to check out boomermusicupdate.com. It's a site that I curate. I did a little remembrance of that that you can find right there, and hopefully it's free and you can subscribe, and you'll find out it connects boomers to music of today, and there's a remembrance of my car ride with John on that site on Boomer Music Update.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. People sometimes they come up to me and they say, "I grew up watching you." I'm going to pull that with you. I grew up listening to you on the radio, the Big 610 KFRC. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for your remembrances of John Lennon.
You got it, Sal.
Let's bring in Mike here. Mike, I grew up listening to Dave, your Duke Sholin, John McFlanagan, Dr. Don Rose. And when Dave Sholin talks about John Lennon, just having bonded with him, it must be really strange to have that happen on the day he was killed.
Oh, I can't imagine. I mean, just a powerful story there from Dave, and I'm glad he was able to join us and share that. And I just want to touch on one thing that he mentioned, that Lennon was living that private life, those last 5 years from 75 to 1980 up into his death. And a lot of people didn't think he was really involved in any music. And I know Rolling Stone Mag did an interview, I think it was Jonathan Cott, just like 3 days before his death. And Jonathan asked him, he noticed in his apartment in New York a guitar hanging above his bed. And it was always kind of an inspiration saying, yeah, I'm not involved in music, but I'm thinking about getting back into the limelight. I'm thinking about picking up the guitar. And that guitar is the one he really used in making that final album with Yoko, Double Fantasies. So yes, he was living a private life and they were raising their son, but music was always part of his soul, and he was still doing it, picking up that guitar, Sal, and playing. And the songs live forever. I mean, think about how many covers are out there, how many bands have done a Beatles song.
You're absolutely right, Mike. We do miss him 40 years later, I do still think about that quite a bit.